He cracked the uncrackable, shortened a world war, saved millions of lives, yet the world never thanked him. He died alone, branded a criminal. And for decades his name remained buried in silence. This is the story of Alan Turing, the man who changed the world but couldn't change the way it treated him. Welcome to Still Rise, where the quiet stories echo loudest. Today, we walk through the life of a man whose mind bent reality, yet whose heart was broken by it. The story of Alan Turing isn't just about machines or war. It's about genius, isolation, bravery, tragedy, and most of all, silence. Stay with us. This is a journey you won't forget. Alan Turing wasn't born a hero. He wasn't even born understood. He came into this world on June 23, 1912, in Maida Vale, London, a time when war drums were distant echoes and the world still moved on horse-drawn wheels. But from the very beginning, Alan was different. While other children played with marbles and mud, Alan watched the sky. He'd stare at falling leaves and try to calculate their speed. He spoke little, often tripping on words. But in his head, the world was alive with logic. His parents, Julius and Ethel, were traditional. His father was a civil servant in India. They expected a son who would follow the rules, speak when spoken to, blend in, behave. But Alan didn't blend. He bent. He bent rules, bent expectations, bent thoughts into shapes no one else could see. By the age of 6, Alan was reading science books most adults couldn't understand. At 13, he was enrolled at Sherborne School, a boarding school that valued poetry over physics. There, Alan struggled. Not because he wasn't smart, but because the system had no space for someone like him. He was mocked for his odd posture. He was scolded for his curiosity. He was lonely painfully, quietly lonely, till one day he met Christopher Morcom. Christopher was everything Alan wasn't: charming, confident, accepted, but he was also brilliant, kind. To Alan, Christopher was more than a friend. He was the first person who saw him not just as a strange boy, but as a mind worth listening to. Alan's letters to Christopher were filled with questions about the universe, logic, time, and thought. Their friendship became Alan's lifeline. But then, the lifeline snapped. In 1930, just before university, Christopher suddenly died of bovine tuberculosis. He was only 18. Alan was devastated. His quiet world grew even quieter. But something changed in him. He made a decision not loudly but firmly. He would understand the world down to its deepest logic. Because if he could make sense of the universe, maybe he could make sense of the pain. Alan earned a scholarship to King's College, Cambridge. There, for the first time, he wasn't the odd one out. He found thinkers, mathematicians, professors who didn't mock his silence, they listened. He began exploring the limits of thought. What is a mind? What is intelligence? Can a machine think? These weren't just strange ideas, they were impossible ones. But in 1936, at just 24 years old, Alan Turing wrote something that would change everything. A paper. Just a paper, titled On Computable Numbers, with an application to the Enschädungsprobe. A mouthful, yes. Inside it was an idea so powerful, it would lay the foundation for every computer that exists today. He described something now called the Turing machine, a theoretical device that could perform any logical operation. The seeds of artificial intelligence, of the internet, of the future, it's all on paper, in silence, and the world didn't notice. To Princeton, then to war, Turing's genius caught the attention of American scholars, and he spent some time at Princeton. But war was brewing in Europe. And when Hitler invaded Poland in 1939, Turing knew where he had to be. He returned home, without any fanfare, was quietly recruited into the British code-breaking headquarters, Bletchley Park. What happened there would never make headlines. Alan Turing would face a challenge so complex, so urgent, that millions of lives depended on it. Not for decades. But behind those quiet doors, in 1939, as Europe descended into war, Germany unleashed one of its most powerful weapons, the Enigma machine. It wasn't a tank or a missile. It was a code, shifting puzzle that changed every single day. The Allies were blind, ships were sinking, lives were lost, and no one could read the enemy's messages. But Alan Turing believed he could. He walked into Bletchley Park, the British government's top-secret decoding facility. It's a place where mathematicians, chess champions, and crossword experts tried and failed to crack the uncrackable. And then came Turing. Quiet, awkward, brilliant beyond words. He didn't want to do things the usual way. While others tried to solve Enigma by hand, Turing said something that made them all pause. What if a machine could think? What if it could learn? He designed a machine, not just any machine, a mechanical brain. One that could analyze thousands of combinations in seconds. He called it the bomb, and people laughed at him, mocked his obsession. They called him mad. He said, "This isn't how it's done." But he didn't stop. He worked day and night, in silence. While bombs fell outside and the world burned, Turing built, screw by screw, gear by gear, and then one day it worked. A quiet click from the bomb, a message decrypted. One German command revealed, one U-boat avoided, one ship saved, and then another. Time was everything. Every second, people were dying, but Turing's machine gave them hope. It allowed the Allies to read Nazi messages in real time, to predict attacks, to reroute convoys, to stop ambushes before they even happened. Historians say it shortened the war by 2 to 4 years. It saved more than 14 million lives. But the public never knew, because everything Turing did was classified. No medals, no headlines, no parades, just silence. The kind of silence only a true hero can endure. Even as his machine changed the course of history, Alan Turing was still seen as odd. He didn't fit in, didn't speak much, didn't play politics. He stayed in his lab, solving problems. While the world outside prepared to move on, never knowing the name of the man who gave them their future. The war hero who couldn't speak the world celebrated peace. The Nazis were defeated. Towns were rebuilt. Lives were restarted. But Alan Turing? He was told to stay quiet. The mission was over. The files were sealed. The machine dismantled. Nade. And the man who built it, the man who beat Enigma, was erased from the story. There were no headlines, no books, not even a thank you. He went back to Cambridge, to a small room, a blackboard, a quiet life. Even after the war, Alan's mind never stopped. He began asking new questions. What makes us think? Can machines learn? Can a computer become human? He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing the birth of artificial intelligence. In 1950, he wrote something that would become legendary, The Imitation Game. A paper simple in words, revolutionary in thought. If a machine can talk like a human, think like a human, feel like a human, is it still just a machine? That question still echoes in today's world of AI. But back then, no one cared, because Alan Turing had a secret they wouldn't forgive. In 1952, Alan Turing was arrested. Not for treason, not for leaking war secrets, not for any violence. He was arrested for being gay. It was illegal in Britain. They called it gross indecency. It's the same charge they once gave Oscar Wilde. He wasn't just put on trial, he was humiliated, stripped of his clearance, banned from his own labs, told to choose prison or chemical castration. He chose the latter, because he still wanted to think, to work, to live. But the world had already decided to forget him. 2 years later, on June 7, 1954, Alan Turing was found dead in his home. An apple sat beside his bed, partially eaten. Some believe it was laced with cyanide. Others say it was just a symbol, a quiet nod to Snow White, his favorite story. He was only 41. The same man who helped save millions was broken by the very country he saved. And the world still said nothing. Years passed, then decades. And slowly, quietly, the truth emerged. Books were written. Films were made. Historians uncovered the scale of what he had done. You deserved so much better. In 2009, the British Prime Minister said, "On behalf of the British government, all those who live freely thanks to Alan Turing, we're sorry." In 2013, Queen Elizabeth II granted him a royal pardon. But it came 59 years too late. His legacy. Today, every computer, every phone, every AI carries a piece of Turing's mind. Every line of code whispers his name. He didn't just invent machines, he imagined a future. One where thought could be born from metal. One where silence could speak louder than applause. And in the end, he didn't need a statue. He became something far greater. An idea, a legacy, spark. He never saw the future he built. But that future sees him in every screen, every signal, every spark of artificial thought. Alan Turing didn't just build a machine, he built a new kind of question. Can machines think? One line from a 1950 paper would later become the foundation of artificial intelligence. Before Siri, before Google, before ChatGPT, there was Turing. Not with fancy tech, but with chalk on a board and thoughts that refused to stay small. The Turing test, a mirror to ourselves, he proposed a simple challenge. Can a machine talk in a way that fools a human? If yes, then does that machine have a mind? The world called it the Turing test. But it wasn't just a test for machines. It was a mirror for us. What makes us human? Words, thought, emotion. And if a machine can copy those, what are we left with? The future he never saw decades past. Technology grew. Circuits got faster. Silicon replaced paper. And quietly, like Turing once did, the world changed again. Self-driving cars. Smart assistants. Voice, vision, learning, memory. Things he once imagined became real. But Alan never saw them, never touched them, never heard the voices that speak today in echoes of his own. AI today, a ghost of his mind. Every AI system today, from medical bots to language models, is built on logic Turing helped shape. He never said, "I built AI." He never needed to, because real visionaries don't chase recognition. They build silently, and time catches up. Today, when a machine writes a poem, or answers a question, or mimics human thought, it's not just data, it's the whisper of a man who once sat alone with no applause, dreaming of machines that could feel. In 2021, the UK placed his face on the £50 note. Not for his war work, not for cracking Enigma, but for changing the very definition of intelligence. And yet, that note carries more than a picture, carries a message. We failed you in life, but your ideas, they live beyond death. Why Turing still matters. In a world drowning in noise, Turing reminds us of the power of silent minds. He didn't fight with weapons. He fought with thought, with logic, with heart. And even now, as we race into a future of artificial beings and digital thought, his quiet voice asks us, what does it mean to think? What does it mean to feel? And in the end, what makes us human? Some people leave behind books, others, statues. Alan Turing left behind a question. What else is possible if we stop being afraid of thinking differently? The legacy he didn't live to see. Alan died at just 41, alone, unrecognized, convicted for simply being who he was. No medals, no speeches, no parades. Only silence. And yet his silence grew louder with every decade. It's the world he imagined. Of intelligent machines, deep learning, and limitless logic was no longer science fiction. It was reality. The man erased by his time became the foundation of ours. His code lives in ours. Turing never saw the internet. He never saw a computer that could fit in your hand, or speak in your voice, or think like your mind. But everything we use, smartphones, AI, encryption, satellites, they all carry his fingerprints. He cracked codes to end a war, then wrote the code to begin a future. Silently, carefully, relentlessly. But his true genius wasn't machines. Your empathy? He asked. What if machines could think like us? But deeper still, what if we could finally understand how we think? His dream wasn't cold, robotic logic. It was human, soft, curious. He didn't want machines to replace us. He wanted them to reflect us, to force us to question who we are. Decades after his death, the British government said sorry. In 2009, they apologized. In 2013, they pardoned him. And in 2021, his face appeared on a £50 note. But no apology can rewrite a life. The boy who was bullied, the man who was silenced, the genius who saved millions was never thanked when it mattered. Today, children learn about Turing, not with shame, but with awe. Scientists quote him, thinkers study him. AI models are built on the questions he once whispered into the dark. He didn't build empires. He didn't seek fame. He built ideas that outlived kings, wars, and machines. The lesson he left behind Alan's story isn't just about code. It's about courage. At the courage, too. Think differently. Be different. Speak when it's easier to stay silent. And keep building, even when no one's watching. In a world chasing noise, Alan Turing's life whispers a truth sometimes. The quietest people build the loudest futures. He never asked to be remembered, but the future could not forget him. Some people are remembered for what they built. Alan Turing is remembered for what he believed was possible, even when no one else did. In silence, he cracked the impossible, and in silence, he shaped the future. And maybe that's the kind of legacy that lasts the longest. If this story moved you, like the video to support silent history. Comment your favorite Turing quote or thought. Subscribe for more quiet voices that shaped the world. Still rise, where the quiet ones are never forgotten.